Yo, welcome back to the Reactive Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Sunny, your host, and today we're diving into the world of web scraping with Aleksandras from Oxylabs. Since 2015, Oxylabs has grown into Europe's fastest growing web scraping solutions provider, with the world's largest ethical proxy network standing at over 100 million IPs across 200 countries. We'll explore how Oxylabs is using AI to revolutionize web scraping, crawling, and data collection, and they're making it easier and more efficient than ever for businesses to gather the data they need. Their brand new AI-driven tool, OxyCopilot, is huge in simplifying these processes, offering huge value to industries such as e-commerce, cybersecurity, and digital marketing by streamlining operations and boosting results. I'm excited to speak to Aleksandras. Let's dive straight in and see how Oxylabs is leading the future of web scraping. Let's go. Welcome to the show, Aleksandras. It's a pleasure to have you, product owner at Oxylabs. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Sonny. Thanks for inviting me here.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm really happy
Firstly,
to be here.
yeah, dude, feel free, introduce yourself. Who are you? Who is Oxylabs? And what are we talking about?
Yeah, you pretty much introduced me. Aleksandras, work as a product owner at Oxylabs. I work with scrapers mostly. And what is Oxylabs, right? It's a web data gathering company.
Okay.
Yeah, we started almost 10 years ago, actually.
Yeah.
We started off as a data center proxy provider.
Nice.
And then, over the years, we grew to this sort of all-encompassing web data gathering solutions company.
Okay.
So, we started with just data center proxies, as I said, and then we introduced other products like residential proxies. Then we spun up our scraper API system. And just recently, about a year ago, we started offering pre-made data sets for clients.
Nice.
So that's moving up the, I wanted to call it value chain, but really up the simplicity chain, really. So first of all, you'd have to do your own scraping by the proxies we provide you.
Yeah.
Then, scraper API, you just send us an API call whenever you want something scraped, and we,
Nice.
use our magic basically to, return the results. But that's still, not, perhaps a higher level of complexity than some of our clients want to operate at. And with data sets, they just give us the requirements, say, how often they would like the data refreshed.
Yeah.
And they just get an email, or just get their files on their cloud storage every so often, as a grid. So,
Nice.
yeah.
So you guys started off in 2015, and I think the first thing that I kind of want to clear up, because even when I started working with you guys, the idea of a proxy service, it was a bit confusing. Can you just explain what that means to anyone who may have no idea? Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's start with the fact, a very simple one, that all communication on the internet takes place, basically all communication happens between IP addresses.
Yep.
And then a proxy server is a server that lets you route your internet traffic through it.
Okay.
So that whichever website you're making requests to sees the proxy IP address instead of seeing your computer's IP address, to put it simply.
Right.
Now,
Nice.
how it's useful, how it's applied to scraping is, you could try do some web scraping, or to get a bit technical, sending HTTP requests from your computer to a site you want to scrape, and then hoping you get a good result, right?
Yep.
So you can make a bunch of those requests to a site you're trying to scrape from your IP address, but if you make too many of them, it's really easy for the website to really tell that there's something weird going on. There's thousands of requests coming from that IP address, and it's quite easy for them to block you on those grounds.
Right.
So then, with a proxy server, or usually our customers acquire hundreds or thousands of proxy IPs from us, they can distribute the requests across all the IPs they acquire from us. So then the website that they're trying to gather data from sees all these different IPs, making tiny bit of, just a few requests each, instead of seeing one computer IP address making a lot of requests. So that's really the basic principle here.
Nice. So essentially it's mimicking real users coming in from different directions. So it's it's harder to identify that one person is trying to web scrape.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just a load distribution, I guess.
And then I think that leads us on to web scraping itself. So web scraping, very simple concept in theory of going to a website
Yeah.
and taking information from it. Now, here's a couple of interesting parts, right? So some of the common misconceptions, how do you guys ensure that you do it ethically, one, and especially around data privacy, the legal considerations, how do we work around that in such a field like this?
Yeah, well, this is a loaded subject. So let's start with the ethicality. With Oxylabs, well, of course, we want to do things legally, ethically, and we want to, we're just complete white hatters, to be blunt. The way we approach ethicality as it relates to web data gathering, first of all, we have a way of sourcing proxies that our customers then use. Well, with residential proxies, a lot of these exit IPs, a lot of these proxies belong to just regular people who decide to share their internet traffic with us. Those people, we have a provider who, really has an application basically for internet sharing or proxying, and those people get paid for that service. And, they explicitly agree that, their internet traffic is going to be shared with someone who's basically going to pay them for the traffic. So that's the one aspect of ethicality that we adhere to. Of course, if you think about it, like we have a lot of clients, so how do we ensure that our proxies are used for good reasons, basically?
Yeah.
So there we have a strict KYC process, know your customer process. And
Nice.
we are, even though we are not able to see very detailed information about what our customers are doing with our service because of the HTTPS protocol specifics, like after the exchange in ciphers, we cannot, all the traffic is encrypted between the proxy user and the website they're trying to scrape or make a request to. But we can still see on the domain level where they are going to.
Yeah.
And there are some websites that, pretty much are, well,
No goes.
Some websites have legitimate use cases and some really don't.
Yeah.
So we use KYC, and we really try to, make sense of what our customers are doing and understand,
Nice.
all the time.
So starting from a niche area of just web scraping alone with the basically proxy backing and that's making you a differentiating sort of business in the space. How do you grow from a small niche startup to something of over 500 people? So now you're at an enterprise level serving huge companies. Let's talk about that journey.
Yeah, I think we were lucky in a way. We started when there were just a couple of companies offering this kind of service. And really, some of the first customers we landed, they said they would really do, acquire IP addresses and build proxy servers in-house. And then we just thought it's too much hassle, and they wanted a company to do that for them.
Yeah.
What really, I think what really ties all the dots, connects all the dots here, is that we really wanted to offer something to our customers that suits their needs. So, it started with the data center proxies, and then we heard like, well, can you do residential proxies? So we thought, there's an opportunity there, and we followed that lead, and that's how we created that product. And then we saw customers really struggling to scrape a few popular targets, targets websites. So we thought, why don't we just simplify that to them and offer an API service which pretty much they can interact with quite freely. They don't have to pretend to be a legitimate site visitor, and just get their data.
Nice.
So that turned out to be a good value proposition to our customers, and that's how we did it basically. And then, and then after that, came the pandemic period.
Yeah,
we saw a lot of businesses move online basically because of no direct interaction with their customers, and a lot of businesses went through this digital transformation, and as a consequence, well, the amount of things to scrape on the web became much bigger.
Yeah,
And that's the reason our services became more in demand, I guess.
Nice. So pretty much starting from renting data center IPs to slowly expanding out the product portfolio based on the demand. And that's pretty cool. I've actually used one of the main services myself. So the one where you make an API call, for example, to
Yeah.
booking.com and it scrapes it. The most game changer thing I found when I used it was that it brought back structured data. So as an engineer, that's so helpful, especially when you're web scraping. The fact that you guys took that away from us and abstracted it and then basically just returned structured data. It's like I think that's a huge value proposition in this space. So that's pretty cool. So now Oxylabs, basically you've been around for pretty decent amount of time. So 2015 established, starting off as a bootstrap small business. What was the mentality? Was it sort of a fail fast, learn fast approach? Was it sort of a slow and steady, go with what works? How did you guys approach all of that when you were growing in the beginning?
We broke a lot of things. So I think, I'm getting back to the previous point, but really getting customer feedback was so important, and just
Yeah.
building what they say they will use. And we were lucky in a way that we had good relations with some of our early clients. They would just tell us basically how we could improve our service.
So that's how you were able to essentially differentiate from the other web scraping providers, by listening to your customers and actually going ahead and building what they want as opposed to what you think they want. Because as I'm aware, there's tons of competition in the web scraping and proxy space. So
Yeah,
how did you guys truly, maybe we can talk about some of the R&D approaches or the things that you took to differentiate?
yeah. Well, yeah, R&D is a good one. I mean, we are investing heavily in sort of pushing the boundaries in terms of what web scraping can be, and not just relying on all the, on things like just brute force, like retrying or things like that. But we are, investing heavily in building our own intellectual property
Nice.
and patenting it. But at the same time, another thing we are doing is we are using machine learning, we're using AI to develop new and efficient ways for customers to use our system or make our system performance better, or just do
Nice.
things quicker.
Awesome. And obviously, when you're working with smaller companies, this kind of fail fast approach works pretty good because you can talk to the company. But when you shift over to the larger enterprise clients, and let's be real, that's where some big money is at. How do you go ahead and shape the approach from a startup culture to working with the larger corporations? Because obviously naturally things will have to slow down, you have to be a bit more stable. How do you do that while you maintain like a competitive edge in the space?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure how we do it really. Well, I mean, you know, some of the needs of big corporations are exactly the same as those of a small web scraping project. The only difference is that, whereas a smallest project would consume, like, I don't know, a couple of gigabytes of data per day, large enterprises can do terabytes or hundreds of terabytes per day. And that's what really, the mechanics of a single scraping operation, they don't change.
Yeah.
Everyone wants a stable service, whether you're a small scraper or you're an enterprise, So in that regard, they're more or less the same. I think one of the big challenges has been in the past, with enterprise customers, just ensuring that we're able to deliver, the large requirements and
Yeah.
infrastructure scaling and all of that. It has been challenging in the past, but we learned to deal with that and learn to predict what's going to happen because, enterprise requirements change. They
Yeah.
scale up. They have their busy periods and then they have their relaxed periods. Learn to play around that. And also, yeah, we just understood better what they want, basically. But
Nice.
to enterprise customers, apart from service stability and your ability to deliver whatever requirement they ask for, is it's important to them to work with a reliable partner in terms of reputation.
Nice. Yeah.
So that's one thing we take very seriously. The other thing, a lot of enterprise customers, they require ISO certificates, which we are now an ISO certified company
Awesome.
ourselves, not just the data centers we work with, but
Yeah.
so there's if you want to play with enterprises, you have to really adhere to their standards. Slim chance you're going to convince them that those standards are not important. It can
Yeah.
only happen if there's no other choice, basically, and they must use your service because there's no alternative. Like you said, these days there are a lot of proxy companies, a lot of scraping API companies out there. So there's always another choice that you could go for.
Yeah, because I think it's a really interesting part that you've moved on is basically the comparison of a startup with gigabytes of data versus a corporate, which is basically, terabytes. It could be terabytes every minute, for example, right?
Yeah.
When you were scaling in that part, I'm really curious, did you build in-house to scale, or was it relying on cloud services, other external services? What was the most cost-effective approach there? Or maybe you tried both and then you figured out in-house was better or one was better?
Yeah. Well, we don't build our servers. We don't build and support the hardware. Yeah.
Okay.
We acquire those, but we acquire servers and they're kept in the data center, and then we run our own software on there. So it's not like a cloud on-demand approach. We do like rent physical machines that we work with. That seems to have worked out the best for us. In terms of moving our service to cloud, I guess you could gain 1 or 2 nines, add a couple of nines to your uptime, but the amount of money you'd have to pay for a system like that fully on cloud, like AWS, GCP, is just so much higher that it's just not worth it.
So just to clarify, you do acquire your own servers and you do maintain your own data centers?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we have a data center provider, basically.
Okay.
We rent servers from them. We don't own them as such.
Got you.
Yeah. But we are not fully sort of on cloud. Of course, there are services that do run on cloud, but that's more of an exception. We try to manage on our own servers.
Nice. Now, Oxylabs is part of a bigger community, Testnet, I believe it's called, which is a business accelerator and investor group. Now, they work with cybersecurity, web intelligence, health tech, ed tech, growth tech. Which area have you found is the most tricky? Was it like the cybersecurity space for obvious reasons? Is there any area in particular which was a problem space? And how did Oxylabs kind of tackle that and learn from that?
Okay. Well, yeah, I can't say we work with every company on Testnet's under Testnet's umbrella, so to speak. But we do work with cybersecurity companies and companies like SEO, e-commerce, and others.
Yeah,
I think you've touched upon a good point, like understanding what cybersec companies do and how they apply web scraping and what they're looking for. Yes, still can't say I understand it 100%.
Yeah,
like with e-commerce, there are a few popular e-commerce websites that you can make a good assumption that the customer is interested in e-commerce data and gonna scrape sites like Amazon, and then perhaps try and capture products in a category and get their price and their ratings and things like that. With cybersec, it's all sort of everyone does it a bit differently. They visit all of these quirky looking domains, and God knows what happens when they visit those links, and they're kind of secretive, and very rarely do they disclose how exactly they do what they do. As far as I understand, cybersec clients, a lot of what they do with that relates to web scraping is threat intelligence.
Right. Nice.
Trying to figure out phishing sites, trying to figure out, where malicious links lead you to.
Right.
And things like that.
Awesome. Now, you talked about Amazon. I want to go over a very common example with Amazon. So anyone who's done any web scraping of any kind will know that websites like Amazon are particularly harder to scrape than an average e-commerce site, because they'll change their class names. They'll kind of mix things up over randomly. Now, how do you approach that when you're returning structured data? So, for example, one of your products, the one where we can basically make a simple API request to an Amazon page, a product link, for example, and then it returns the structured data. Do you have a dedicated team ensuring that works? Or like, is it an automation test that's happening in the background to make sure that, okay, we couldn't scrape today because Amazon changed something on the screen? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, there aren't that many alternatives to really manual work when it comes to parsing.
Yeah.
And that's, the classical way of just finding your CSS or XPath selectors on the page that you're interested in, and figuring out how to write an abstract one that captures the data that you need. So yeah, that's pretty much how we developed most of our dedicated parsers.
Nice.
Yeah, so you will need to have more than one selector for the price, for the title on Amazon, because there's so many layouts. You can compare a book layout to I don't know, a hardware 2 layout with two completely different things. So you just have to look for the title or the price or whatever else in a few different places and see where you find it.
Nice.
However, we are moving in the direction of changing this approach. Perhaps we can talk about it a bit later. When it comes to the OxyCopilot.
Yep. I was literally driving into that direction, because obviously we've gone from manual work, and now AI is obviously a big thing. So we're moving towards, the AI kind of revolution, let's call it. So what's the relationship like with web scraping and AI development? Do they complement each other? Is there a lot of, approaches that you guys have found out, well, actually, this really helps us with the web scraping process, or getting data, summarizing it, parsing it? What's the journey been like with Oxylabs and AI?
Yeah. Okay, where do I begin? So, before the whole Gen AI boom, we were already experimenting and building things with the use of machine learning. So we started by getting together an advisory board, from people who have worked places like NASA, Google, big American companies that do a lot of things with machine learning.
Yeah.
Though took their experience, took their advice, and tried to build something that we could use to make the web data gathering process simpler. And that's how our adaptive parser was born. Parsing solution that basically can take any e-commerce product page and then parse out some of the main data points, like the price, the title, the description, bullet points, and some others.
Nice.
So there's that bit. Fast forward a few years, and the Gen AI, started booming, obviously, and we started looking into ways to simplify the web data gathering flow for customers by using this thing. And just to go on a bit of a tangent, just had this thought that web scraping and Gen AI, they have this sort of a positive feedback loop.
Okay.
Because of a lot of LLMs, they use scraped data for training, right?
Yeah.
And as a result of the scraped data, they can make their models better, and then we can use the models in a way that makes scraping easier. And then there you go. There's a loop. So anyway, getting back to the point I was trying to make, with Gen AI being quite well developed, we started looking into ways to apply it to our sphere. And of course, you could, I guess everyone's done it. You go through ChatGPT, you say, well, build me a scraper for Amazon or whatever else.
Yeah.
And you see them fail miserably, at least at first. There'll be, I remember they would not, this ChatGPT tool did not want to give me code because scraping was a gray area, or they had their own sort of reasons and didn't want to talk about it too much. But anyway, the code generated by LLMs, it is not going to cut it really. Because it's not trained on data that's there's not a lot of public data that they could use to train their model in a way that would help them overcome all the anti-bot protection and things like that. So LLM generated scraping code is not really the solution here. Of course, you could say, I'm just gonna run an LLM agent on my side and, let it figure out, do all these steps and get to parse data. Or you could just feed the LLMs your scrape HTMLs and hoping we can structurize it. But that's going to be quite expensive if you want to do this the way, So, so the Gen AI generated code, not too good. If you want to use your OpenAI API for each, processing each HTML, it's just too expensive.
Yeah.
So what we came up with is OxyCopilot. Basically, yeah, you can interact it on our dashboard. The way it works is you, for the parsing part of it, is you give it a few URLs, then you describe in natural English language, give us a few sentences of what data points you want to extract it from that document, and then you let our Copilot, do its work basically. So what you get at the end of the Copilot sort of execution process is the integration code that you can run on your side.
Okay.
And what that code does is it interacts with our API and gives it all the parsing logic that has just been generated.
Right.
And then you can submit your parsing logic to our API and give us any URL that you're interested in, and you're going to get back your result. So in this way, we're just using LLMs to build, the initial sort of parsing template, the initial parsing solution.
Yeah.
Then our customers hopefully are able to reuse that when they interact with our API. Our API is quite fast. It is very good at scraping, very good at parsing, whereas compared to, an LLM API, quite expensive and also quite slow.
Yeah.
So we're just using LLMs to build generate the initial integration code, and then we basically let our customers use that code to interact with us.
So let's compare a manual approach with the API service that you guys offer versus using OxyCopilot. So a real world use case in action. So so for example, if I'm doing it manually, I would have to essentially write the scraping logic myself, or use, if you're supporting, for example, Amazon, I can use your API endpoint to scrape the data from it. Now, let's say I have a random website called, I don't know, ishopforfun.com, and it's crazy layout, everything's happening in there. It's got some moving parts and everything. But with OxyCopilot, is it as simple as literally saying, okay, I want to know which products are on sale on this page, and I want to know all of their prices and the description? Would that be something that we could potentially do, given within reason that it's all on the screen available?
Oh yeah. That's exactly what the level of the simplicity really. I mean, I'm not a programmer by any means myself, but I'm still able to produce these integration code samples that, just make our API return structured data with all the data points that I asked for. And that's really, beyond impressive. At least to me, it is.
Dude, that's actually huge, because before I've done the process of manually writing it, and it can be so tedious and frustrating. Whereas from the sounds of it, this is exactly what a lot of developers are looking for when they're scraping. My only question would be, so the parsing part. So from my understanding before, there was a certain select number of websites that were supported because, as we spoke about, it was a manual process to parse data. Is the AI solution like OxyCopilot, does it have an area which can handle that parsing to return structured data from a website that you haven't manually configured the parsing for?
Yeah, so you give us any URL, you describe what data points you want retrieved, and then we build you the integration code, and then you can use it with the website that you're interested in. Of course, if you want to start gathering structured data from another website, go to OxyCopilot again, give it your set of requirements, and it will give you another API integration code sample that you can then use for that website. Yeah. So it's really, as long as we can fetch the data, fetch the HTML, we can make the rest of the steps happen, and and then you are the benefactor of all of that.
That's pretty huge. I also read that you guys used about around 500 developers worth of research to help the development of this tool. What was the feedback like from devs? What was their experience when they were using it? What was the caveats? What was improved based on that feedback?
Yeah. Well, okay. Let me think. Yeah. First of all, the interface bit was changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because we started out thinking that we can have we could structure the input a bit differently, basically. So right now you just enter a few sentences, just a piece of text that describes what you want us to do.
Yeah.
Previously it was like, add a field, enter the field, the output field name, and a bit of description about that. So that part has changed, the UI part.
Nice.
I think a good part of the feedback was related to the way that you form your request, the way you describe what you want the Copilot to do.
Yeah.
So we adapted to that a bit. Just regular things like seeing how people break the tool was super useful. And they made us just improve tiny bits. Fix bugs.
I think it's so interesting when, especially, I think it's more of a validation to a lot of upcoming devs who ignore this part where honestly we learn to build something, but essentially what we build isn't always what's the best. So getting that feedback cycle in place as soon as possible of everyone keeps breaking by pressing that button after they press that button. Why do they do that? And then listening to it and be like, actually, let's simplify the whole thing. So it's rather than 5 clicks, it's 1 click to do that. And it's so important, and I think that's probably a big reason, if I'm correct, of your growth.
Yeah, and that's not only related to Copilot or it's just
literally everything.
Very general thing. I mean, as soon as you get your customer feedback, you're gonna understand what you didn't think of in the first place, or perhaps you didn't capture their requirements, or those requirements might have changed, or maybe there's a better way of doing things. So yeah, to us, that's really important, getting customer feedback and reacting to that.
Nice.
At the same time, I think it's important to be able to generalize. Sometimes customers ask you for a solution, but my question is a lot of the time is, what problem are they trying to solve? Just getting back to the problem, because if you don't know the problem, you just go to solution stage. I'm not sure if that's gonna work very well for you.
Yeah.
You just really must understand the problem, and then there can be any number of solutions, or you can change your customer's mind and give them something that they didn't know was possible, or they didn't think of it, but that serves their needs even better than anything they asked for, really.
Yeah, I think that's absolute gem what you just said, because it correlates to even if you're building any bit of software or any app for that matter, especially in the SaaS space right now. On the channel, we're building tons of SaaS businesses and apps.
Yeah.
And I think that is that's like the core mechanism behind either success or failure, right? Finding a problem first and then making a solution for it, and then trying out a couple of solutions, like you said, persuading your user maybe to go with your solution as opposed to the normal way they might have thought of solving it. But I think that's really, really gold. We also mentioned crawling. So for anyone who doesn't know the difference between web scraping and crawling, if you could just give a quick sentence as to what the difference is and how you plan on using AI to basically enhance the crawling side.
Yeah. So let's start with the basics: scraping versus crawling. So when I use the word scraping, I mean just a single scraping operation, a single HTTP request to fetch a single page from the web.
Yeah.
Now compare that to crawling. Crawling is a process where you traverse a website by using links between pages, and then you open the next HTML, you find new links to go to, and then you sort of go through the websites by using links. So crawling operation consists of multiple scraping operations. So
nice.
So that's the relationship there. But I hope that kind of covers it.
That's really cool. Now, obviously, where you're scraping all this data, right? There's a part of the equation which we haven't spoken about, which is data collection, right? So, what's the plans for Oxylabs and data collection? Because as far as I'm aware, if you've got tons of data in your possession, and we'll talk about the legal sides of it afterwards, but if you've got tons of data in your possession, that's worth a lot these days, especially when you've got AI models being trained on data and all this kind of stuff. So what can we expect to see from Oxylabs now in the next kind of upcoming year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, now that AI is in the picture, and how does that change things?
Wow, yeah, I don't think I can give you the answer to 5 years. Let me think.
That's all good. I put you on the spot, haven't I? Okay, let's talk about it in a way that's a bit more simple then. So right now, I believe Oxylabs you offer data sets, right? So large data sets.
Oh yeah, we do, yeah.
So is that part enhanced by AI at the moment?
It's enhanced as much as like we use AI for building the tools that we then use for gathering data sets. So like the scraper API system and the proxy system. Like it's all, these are all parts that we must use to, gather a data set. Because a data set, all it is just a set of scraped web pages.
Yeah.
Of course, that's the short description, but like here,
So
these pages must be related in a way to each other. But anyway, as far as data set construction goes, won't be able to give you like too much here. We're just using tools, on a lower level that have Gen AI built into them.
nice. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, how do you operate within the boundaries of the law? And then there's also different locations in the world. So, how do you stay ahead of regulations, which are constantly evolving? GDPR, customer compliance, all of these different
Yeah.
kind of like,
I guess at this point, I want to
lots.
say hi to our lawyers if they're
Yeah.
watching this, because they've been a great help, and honestly, they are the ones that stay on top of the legality aspect. But
Nice.
really, we don't do any scraping of non-public web data.
Okay.
So we are only able to deliver whatever is available on the web without logging in.
Okay.
So that's
Right.
where we draw the line. Of course, there are more sort of things to be aware of, things like GDPR and whatever the American equivalent is. But yeah, that's sort of a more limited problem.
Yeah.
And there are a few websites that sort of are more likely to have public data, let's put it like this. And then that's where we really, get our KYC process strict. And
Yeah.
we must understand what our customers are doing when they use our service to gather data from these websites. If we come to a conclusion that's a legitimate use case and there's no reason for us to sort of, start worrying, that's all good. But really, I think this is very much still a young area, similarly to how it was like 7 years ago when I joined the Oxylabs company. I would have thought that we would have a better legal framework at this point to operate within. But I'm afraid we're in a situation where there are a few court cases that sort of, give you some precedent on how this is going to get judged if it goes that way. But
right.
It's very much still, not that well sort of, described. Well, like I said, we don't do any scraping on the login. Try to steer clear of sites that hold personal data.
Yeah.
And we have a KYC process that ensures that our services aren't used for malicious reasons.
Nice. And I guess like the next thing that I kind of want to talk about is obviously we talked about proxies, we talked about legalities, a few of these things, but what about the consequences of certain situations? For example, if one of your IPs is being used on Amazon, for example, and it gets banned, right? So how are you then basically, because let's say like very high level, let's just say we had 1,000, obviously it's way more than this, but let's just say we had 1,000 proxies that we can go ahead and use as a business, and let's say 500 were banned because they were misused in some shape or form. How are you then rotating it, or do you get a new proxy from, and where do you get that from, and how do you handle a situation like that?
That's a long topic. So basically, we have a constant procurement process for our data center proxies.
Okay.
And, we constantly acquire new data center proxies because old ones, they get blocked and our customers can't use them that well anymore. We cannot allocate them somewhere else. So basically, at the same time as we're procuring, we are getting rid of some old ones that we can't really, monetize anymore.
Nice.
So that's a continuous process. Of course, we sort of, like I said, previously, we sort of know what our customers are going to want, and sometimes they share their requirements in advance, so we're able to prepare for that. We have a good sort of way to predict what's going to happen and where the demand is going to be. But so when your proxies get blocked, put it simply, if we have a replacement straight away, we replace them for you.
Yeah.
If not, we acquire them, we procure them, and then we replace them.
Nice.
So that's the data center proxy side. When it comes to residential proxies, well, I don't think we've had much of an issue with our proxies getting blocked, like the whole pool, because there are just so many of them.
Yeah.
At the same time, compared to data center proxies, it's a bit more difficult to control like the variety of IPs you are going to have in your pool at any given point in time, just because the proxy devices themselves, well, you just don't control them. They have the software installed that lets you use them as a proxy device, but you don't control the actual IP address they are assigned, and you don't control whether they are online or not.
Right.
So then the only way to offer a good service there is just have a lot of proxy devices connected to the network at all times.
Nice. Is that no, I was waiting for you to say something else, but cool. No, nice. I want to kind of dive into your product owner. So you yourself now, being a product owner at Oxylabs, obviously rapidly growing company, small niche startup to 500 plus people. What's your day to day like? Like, especially from a software developer standpoint, I'm curious, is it 2 week sprints, 4 week sprints? Do you guys even do sprints? Is it quite an intense pace, or is it relatively slower because of the things we mentioned, like some legalities maybe need to get processed through? Because let's say, for example, we developed a new way of using AI to scrape. Would there be a legality standpoint as part of that release cycle? So before something was released into actual production, you would have to get it checked by the lawyers. How long does that take? As a product owner, I can imagine that adds a layer to your job. So what's your day to day like?
Well, yeah. Where do I begin? Come to work. I see if nothing really, if everything still works.
Yeah.
And then I start with that. Check how our customers are doing. What's the amount of data that they're pushing through?
Yeah.
And that just gives me a sense of where we are. And after that, I go check. What's priority tickets, how they're doing, and checking if anything's stuck, and if I can help unstick it.
Yeah.
So sprints wise, we're doing 2 week sprints.
Okay.
Right now the team is quite big, so there are a few squads of people working on different parts of our system. Yeah, so system administrators and DevOps guys looking after the infrastructure layer. There's a separate unit for our API side. Separate unit for actually the website interactions, we call it. So the actual scraping, right? So it's split up into these groups of people that each have their own sort of responsibility area, and they have separate planning events and the whole Scrum ceremony cycle. When it comes to legal approval, we do have quite good guidelines from our legal team.
Okay.
In terms of what kind of things would have to be approved by them, or just investigated or looked at by them.
Yeah.
So whenever that sort of thing is arise, we do get in contact with them, get their opinion, get their green light. But it's not a daily thing. Well, at the same time, we have good guidelines. We sort of understand ourselves, the playing ground that we play on. What kind of data we can scrape, and what kind of data can be risky to process.
Yeah.
Personal data.
And do you have a team on call that you can basically quickly get a response back from? Can we do this? Can we not? Or is it quite a tedious process?
Sometimes it takes a bit longer than you would like it to, but what doesn't? There's people have their own priorities, but it's just like a lot of the time it's just dropping a Slack message to check if they have anything to say about it, or if
nice.
They just reply that it's kind of all good, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do have to gather a good amount of data, good sort of, make a good case that this is legitimate, or, answer the questions that they have before you can move ahead and push your, actually ideally you would like to get their permission before you even start something, but sometimes the way things happen is you get too excited, start building, and then at some point you're like, well, hang on, is this gonna get approved? And, of course you involve your legal department in that.
Nice.
In that decision.
I think we can pivot to more of a question of who you're working with now. So Oxylabs, when you approach any form of partnership with whether a new company or a new industry, let's say that industry is facing heavy regulation. For example, it could be finance, healthcare, something like this. How does Oxylabs navigate partnerships with those kind of companies in the highly regulated industries, whether it's finance, for example, quick kind of high level example, finance, let's say I know, for example, you've already mentioned you don't do data which is behind a login. So obviously it has
Yeah,
to be public facing data. But is
yeah.
there any other things that are missing here that are considerations when you work with these kind of companies?
I'm not sure it's these kind of companies are that special, really. I mean, web scraping is web scraping, and to us, perhaps it's more a question to the companies, the highly regulated industry like players, how they ensure that whatever standards are set to them, they actually meet them. But to us, technologically, the process is very much the same. They either use our proxies to make HTTP requests to
Yeah.
whatever site they're interested in, or they use our API, well, to scrape a URL, to make a scraper URL. But then, the way they handle the data, I guess that is going to be much different, depending on the regulations. But to us, it's just technologically exactly the same process.
I think it's so cool to hear that from yourself, where, if we see a brief of Oxylabs from the outside, you have a proxy network with over 100 million IPs, right?
Yeah.
And there's this complex like thought that we would naturally think, oh my God, it must be layers and layers and complexity. But when you hear somebody say inside the company, oh, it's actually pretty simple. We keep it relatively simple. I think it's really a cool way, especially for people starting out with their startups, businesses, just to keep it simple no matter what, and just one problem at a time, like you said, which is no, it's very, very a cool little insight. I have a fun little rapid fire
Yeah.
round now, because I think we've
Yeah.
spoken about most of the things that we wanted to, but these ones, quick answers, obviously within reason. If it's pretty tricky, you can take your time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I kind of want to do it because it's always a fun way of getting a true answer out, like pretty quickly, right? So, question number one: biggest misconception about web scraping that you as a product owner hear or see on a day to day?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's really sometimes looked at as a very simple thing, or frowned upon basically because it's sort of compared to hacking or things like that. But there are very legitimate use cases, and there are websites where you really have to develop some groundbreaking stuff to get that data. So I don't think
Nice.
it's just for sort of newbies, or it's like, I don't know, nothing to be looked down on.
Yeah,
It's a legitimate thing that creates a lot of value for most companies these days, and that the amount of companies that benefit from web data is only going to increase in the future. So I
awesome,
think this is a good field to be in.
amazing, awesome answer, nice. Second question: how do you ensure ethical data collection in one sentence?
Yeah,
Tricky.
the one sentence thing, actually
Yeah,
made it quite
you
difficult.
can give it a couple of sentences. It's cool, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ethical data collection, just in a summary, I guess.
Yeah. I guess to put it very simply, what's a good way to put it? Like, if I had to disclose, all the processes and everything we do as part of web data gathering, would I be ashamed of myself, because I'm doing something tricky, or I'm like breaking the law, or I'm like doing something in immoral ways? So that's a question I sometimes ask myself, am I proud to be doing what I'm doing? And I think I can say that we are all, proud, and we are doing things in a way that if you lets us sleep at,
Yeah,
without a worry.
nice. No, I think that's a good way. If it feels wrong, it's probably wrong, basically on a high level,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. What's the most exciting innovation Oxylabs has recently introduced?
I think we'd have to go back to OxyCopilot. I think
Nice.
that's a big thing. We are rolling out a lot of scraping improvements as well, and those are like very technical, and the kind of cannot say how we overcome bot protection publicly,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of exciting developments there, and the people are really pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and spending a lot of time on it. So
Nice.
these things.
So I think that that's a perfect lead to the next question, which is AI or human expertise. What's driving the business currently more? Are you trying to find highly qualified people in the space, or are you investing more money into discovering AI like solutions, innovations?
We are doing both. Think, well, we are as a company, we are based in Vilnius, Lithuania.
Yeah.
And one of the limitations we have is the pool of developers we can draw from, to attract new talent. And
Yeah.
especially when it comes to experience in the scraping field. Well, there are even less people. Most of the people that are very experienced in scraping have worked with us for years.
Yeah.
At least when it comes to the Lithuanian market. So,
Yep.
the only way to continue growing and keep to speed things up and become more efficient is to adapt Gen AI tools as much as possible.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the ways for us to deal with the engineering talent pool limitations that we have.
Nice. Now, obviously, we spoke about you trying to find the top talent. What's a common mistake beginner developers are making when they're setting up any form of web scraping?
Yeah.
Putting you on the
A very
spot.
simple one. Yeah. No, but that's
Oh,
fine.
that's good.
A
Yeah.
very simple one. Like, there's a lot of articles on the web that talk about your user agent header and how that is important, but also, well, don't forget the other headers. Like, a lot of them are important, and their combinations are kind of important too.
Yeah.
And just try to, instead of just reading a few articles about, your user agent, rotational and whatnot, try and see what headers your browser is sending and why they're recognized as good headers by the site you're visiting.
Nice.
And that should give you some insights into how to scale you up.
I actually didn't know that. I didn't think about that. I would genuinely have thought of the first example you said. So, because that's not my field, but great bit of advice, to be honest.
Yeah.
Next question. What industry benefits the most currently from your knowledge from web scraping today? Is there like a certain sector that's predominantly is getting benefited from it?
There are a few sectors. Of course, we are talking about, businesses that at least have some presence online. So, but yeah, that's a sort of generalization I can make. And we work with SEO companies. We work with e-commerce companies in a big way. Travel, cybersecurity, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. And I really have to admit, I don't really know all the use cases that our service gets used for.
Yeah.
And we get regularly surprised by, how our customers can use the tools that we built to do something new.
Nice.
For instance, you can check quite simply, you can use our scraper API to check if a website is up or down.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. So instead of trying to extract data from the HTML, you just check the response code,
Yeah.
or whether you get a timeout or not. So that's, a good example of how to sort of, get out of the whole mindset of, working, using scraping for HTML processing. And so,
yeah. Nice. Cool. Two final questions, and I've got one to finish it on, so three, I guess. But one, what sets Oxylabs apart in just 3 words from your competitors? Anything? If there's 3 separate words that you would have to select, what would it be that sets you guys apart?
Ethical, innovative, and not sure about the third one.
Ethical and innovative.
Well, I think these
Love
two
it.
things, yeah.
I think it's golden. I think that's the 2 most important things in that space. One to grow, one to stay on the white side instead of the gray.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's it. Yeah.
And the biggest challenge in scaling a proxy network.
Because I don't work with proxy networks directly, so I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Or let's rephrase it to scaling, for example, the residential proxies when you started it off. Starting from a small company, which is serving like startups to corporates.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think much has changed. Like, obviously, the maintenance and scaling your network, but that's not that much of a challenge. A lot of the time, it's just an engineering problem to solve. Like, buying more servers and making sure they get they get load balanced too in a way that is optimal. And perhaps then having a few data centers instead of a single one that handles your requests, so that you're less likely to go down completely. Like, you still have some servers somewhere else that run your software.
Nice.
Well, I think, like I said, the amount of data changes between like small players and the big players, but the mechanics of web scraping, they're all the same. It's just, the amount of times you do it per day or per minute that is going to be different, depending on your scale.
Nice. Awesome. Cool. And the final one, which is probably the one that I get always the most interested in, is you personally working at Oxylabs. What is exciting for you in terms of the next innovation that you guys are working on or the future of data collection? What area are you most excited about?
Yeah, so I think OxyCopilot developments, that's a big thing. We want to, work on self-healing our parsing. We want to work with integrating our other API endpoints there. I think that's, in my view, like I said, you just want to integrate a tool. You don't want to spend too much time just trying to figure out how it works. A lot of the time, you just want to get to the end result. And we should help our customers get to that place with as little friction as possible. And perhaps, in the direction we're moving in, you don't have to know that much about the way our system works to be able to use it. So someone with less programming or computer science background can come in and get some things done.
Awesome. I think I've definitely learned a ton about the scraping space, the IP space. It's been a really valuable chat, and I'm actually personally really excited to try OxyCopilot myself. There's lots of names I've been throwing around, but that's something which I really wanted from you guys, and I didn't know that when you released it. So now I know I'm going to go play with it, and I look forward to working with Oxylabs a bit more. But thank you so much, Andres, for taking out the time. I think it's been an awesome chat. Is there any questions or things you want to speak about before we wrap up the show?
No, I think we could pretty much covered all of it. It's been a good chat with you, Sonny. Thanks for inviting me here.
No, you're absolutely welcome. I think everyone, whatever you found most valuable from this talk, let us know down in the comments. Or if you're watching on Spotify or listening on Spotify, just like the thing, wherever the platform is. We're on so many different platforms now, it's crazy. But yeah, that's pretty awesome. Thank you so much, Aleksandras, and I look forward to keeping in touch, and hopefully we can have a chat in a couple of months and see where the AI is taking us.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Sonny.
Thank you so much.